Good morning again, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see a full room here. Welcome to Delivering Democracy, the Indian Experience Conference. This morning's conference is a partnership between the Consulate General of India, the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, that's the ICCR, and Rutgers. It is, in fact, the first ever ICCR-Rutgers India conference, and we are really pleased to kick off our partnership with this event. On behalf of Rutgers Global, I'd like to extend our deepest thanks to Sandeep Chakravarti, Consul General of India, and Shatrugna Sinha, Deputy Consul General of India, for their invaluable guidance in planning and co-sponsoring this event. I'm particularly delighted to be here today, as someone for whom India, the United States, and Rutgers have all come to represent home. Therefore, being part of today's discussions about Indian democracy at an institution of higher learning that supports a diverse international environment and draws on our global experiences in the United States, where education and democracy are intimately and historically connected, is a very special confluence for me. Having started my journey here as an international student many years ago, today I see myself as the product of a great India-US partnership in education. The timing of this conference is key, undoubtedly, as India prepares for the largest democratic exercise in human history, where more than 800 million people will vote in the general elections this year. My own experience of Indian democracy has been an integral part of my formative years. From open dinner table and classroom conversations to standing in line to vote at the age of 18. And that voting line, with all classes, regional backgrounds, religions, and ages coming together, was a great leveler and representative of the aspirations of Indian democracy. An eminent poet and writer from India, one that I greatly admire, Javed Akhtar, has rightly remarked that because of its pluralist traditions, democracy has found a natural home in India. He makes an interesting observation that I'd like to share with you, that if you draw an arc from India westward towards the Middle East, you will not find that sustained democratic tradition until you reach the Mediterranean coast. For this reason and more, Indian democracy is special and is currently brimming with possibilities. And yet, it is important to note that democratic governance is a subject that finds little mention in the global discourse about India. This may be the result of misperceptions or certain gaps in understanding. And one of the motivations for today's conference is to fill those gaps and showcase the rich legacy and future possibilities of Indian democracy. Today, we are really honored to have such an impressive roster of scholars, diplomats, business leaders gathered here today, who will discuss in depth India's democratic, economic, and social achievements, and will also analyze the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for the world's largest functioning democracy. But before we dive into today's agenda, I would like to share with you a little bit about Rutgers Global and the highlights of the university's engagements with India. A little bit about Rutgers Global, created in 2011 to provide a central and strategic direction for the internationalization efforts of the university. Rutgers Global is the institution's hub for global engagement. Under the leadership of Dr. Rick Garfunkel, Rutgers Global is comprised of units responsible for facilitating study abroad programs, providing legal advising and processing services, as well as transition support for international students and scholars, providing academic support for international students, building partnerships across campus and around the world, coordinating globally themed programs and events, and offering a wide array of innovative academic and professional training programs. Our organization seeks to stimulate conversations such as this on critical global issues and to integrate internationalization into the mission and functions of the university. We see this conference as a positive step in that direction. As the leading public research university in the state, Rutgers is uniquely positioned to respond to the opportunities provided by the development of connections and relationships with India, and through these foster a deeper understanding of Indian culture, language, and people. We know that right here in Middlesex County, we have one of the densest populations of Indian Americans in the United States, and the university itself is home to more than 650 students from India, as well as more than 75 faculty of Indian origin, making up a significant, vibrant, and active community on as well as off campus. Our students can earn a minor in South Asian Studies, drawing from the hundreds of South Asia-related courses taught at Rutgers. We take great pride in our various collaborations with India. Earlier this year, some of our colleagues from the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences visited Amrita University to explore the feasibility of their experiential field-based learning program called Live-in Labs as a potential study abroad option for students. Next month, a group from Rutgers will visit 4 cities in India on a graduate student recruitment trip. Representatives from several academic schools and Rutgers Global will participate in this initiative, and in each city, we will host student engagement sessions as well as networking events with key stakeholders. In 2011, Rutgers was invited to join the Institute for International Education's International Academic Partnership Program for India to help universities in the US form partnerships with universities overseas. Rutgers was one of 11 institutions that participated in the 2012 study tour, visiting more than 20 educational institutions and other organizations in Mumbai, Hyderabad, and New Delhi. In 2012, we were one of 4 US institutions to receive a grant of approximately $250,000 from President Barack Obama and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh as part of the Obama-Singh 21st Century Knowledge Initiative to enhance academic collaborations between the United States and India. In 2013, Rutgers New Brunswick Chancellor, Dr. Richard Edwards, signed a memorandum of understanding with the Indian Council for Cultural Relations and the Consulate General of India in New York City to create an ICCR Chair of Contemporary Indian Studies. And in 2017, we hosted our first ICCR chair, Professor Binod Khadria, from the School of Social Sciences at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, at the School of Management and Labor Relations here at Rutgers. The most recent, in fact, a 5-year agreement between Rutgers and the ICCR for a short-term faculty exchange program was signed just yesterday with the Consul General present and with Dr. Christopher Malloy, our Chancellor, and our Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Barbara Lee. It was a momentous occasion, and we look forward to many such opportunities in the future. We have several active agreements with many institutions of higher education in India, including, but not limited, to the Amity University, Gurgaon, and ERA University with Rutgers Biomedical Sciences, Assam Agricultural University with the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, King George's Medical University with the Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, and Sibir University of Dental Sciences with the Rutgers School of Dental Medicine. There have been some great collaborations with the Indian Institutes of Technology, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and many more. I must also mention, while talking about our collaborations with India, that the Rutgers South Asian Studies Program, or the SASP, an interdisciplinary center dedicated to promoting the study of South Asia and its diasporic communities through public talks, cultural events, hosting scholarly visitors, and offering small grants for research, is also an extremely active center here on campus. We have several other programs and initiatives like the Bengali Language and Culture Initiative, or the multifaceted South Asia Total Health Initiative, and other Indian culture and language focused groups and student organizations. As you can see, I could go on, but Rutgers' ties with India run deep, and we look forward to opportunities to develop them further in the years to come. We are honored again to be hosting today's conference and are certain that the day will be rich with varied perspectives, healthy debate, and thought-provoking discussions. I'd like to once again take the opportunity to thank Sandeep Chakravarti, Consul General of India, and Shatrughan Sinha, the Deputy Consul General, as well as the Indian Council for Cultural Relations and Rutgers Global for putting together this conference. We are confident that this is the first of more such wonderful opportunities. Thank you to our speakers and to you, our wonderful audience, for being here and engaging in this important conversation. I hope it's a productive day for everyone. And without further ado, let me invite Shatrughan Sinha, the Deputy Consul General, who will guide us to the rest of the morning's program. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, we signed an MOU for establishing an ICCR visiting lectureship at Rutgers. We visited Rutgers last in November, and we hope to come back again very soon. With this frequency, probably Rutgers will be our second home in the near future. Why are we discussing democracy today? As you would have seen, the title of the conference is Delivering Democracy. Why democracy in India and why now? Well, democracy is an inseparable part of Indian culture. Strong public institutions, freedom to express wide-ranging political views, and the vibrant economy and society are all underpinned on the strong democratic roots which we have. Democracy is now being used as a tool for public service delivery, especially to the last mile. India is attempting the world's largest exercise in inclusiveness, whether financial, digital, or social rights. India's democracy in a multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic society is an achievement which we all celebrate, and celebrate we must. However, democratic governance and development governance in India find almost no mention in the discourse about India, probably for reasons which are unknown, but some people feel that it is because of the belief that researchers have regarding democracy in India. They have some reservations regarding the quality of democracy in India. This is an attempt to remove those misconceptions. Hopefully, through this conference, we'll be able to improve the understanding of democracy and how it has delivered, how it has developed stakes for everyone within India. This is an attempt to fill that gap, the inadequate level of global discourse about democratic governance and various aspects of India's hard-earned success on this front. We have some eminent speakers from India and the US for today's discussions. I would not like to stand between you and the great panelists which we have. We would start with the first panel. The first panel is will discuss democracy and the economy. I must introduce the panelists. The first, we have a very eminent person from India, the Syed Zafar Islam. He is the national spokesperson for BJP for both political and economic affairs. He was given this responsibility in 2015. He took an early retirement from a very lucrative job. He was managing director, country head of Deutsche Bank in India. But his passion for politics and to serve his motherland, to serve his people, took over, and he joined politics. He's a renowned international investment banker, but right now he's full-time with Bharatiya Janata Party, the ruling party in India. He also interacts with the global investors on behalf of his party. He's on the board of directors for Air India. He's a government nominee on board of directors for Air India. He has done his master's from AMU, and he later specialized in higher management courses in IIM Ahmedabad. If you are not able to find him, please watch Indian television channels from 4 to 11 every evening. You can find him on one of those channels. We also have Vardhan Singh. Vardhan is a local boy. If you know Bollywood, he's the gully boy. You can call him the gully boy. He comes from Atlantic City here in New Jersey. He is also a senior director, technical operations and business development of Hi-Tec Systems, an engineering consultancy firm. But public service and politics, that bug has bitten him hard, and it's very difficult to get away from that. He was in 2018. He stood second in a group of 8. For the U.S. House of Representatives, New Jersey District 2 Republican primary. In 2017, he stood third in a group of 5 in the New Jersey gubernatorial Republican primary. I'm sure we will see him rising further in politics and holding very high offices. Today, he will give us the American perspective of democracy and its delivery. We also have Mr. Ashwini Tewari. He is the country head U.S. operations of State Bank of India, New York. State Bank of India, US, I must say. He's based in New York. He holds a bachelor's degree in engineering, electrical engineering, just like me, but I'm sure you have forgotten all your network theories and electrical machines by now and concentrate more on cash reserves ratio and LIBOR rates, I don't know. He's a career banker with 25 years experience with State Bank of India in India and outside. Having joined as a directly recruited officer in 1991, Mr. Tewari has handled assignments in diverse areas of credit, international banking and retail banking. Prior to his current assignment, he was regional head and general manager, East Asia of State Bank of India, Hong Kong, and oversaw the business development and control of State Bank of India in Hong Kong, China, Japan, Korea, and the neighboring region. That was a huge responsibility, I'm sure. His previous roles also include Deputy General Manager, Operations and Information System, Information International Banking Group, Mumbai, and head of SBI's Cash Management Regional Manager, Branch Head, etc. So he will probably speak about the financial inclusion and how democracy has played a role in the financial inclusion in India. To moderate the discussion, we have an eminent journalist, Ms. Nikhila Natarajan. She works as senior editor, Firstpost. She is also the visiting fellow at Observer Research Foundation, one of the Asia's topmost think tanks. She is a one-stop global editorial resource for the modern-day newsroom with capabilities across beats and multiple languages. She is a pioneer in the sense that she led the practice and discipline of live stream newscasts on social platforms long before it became the industry standard in 2016. She graduated with an economics degree from Madras University and is currently studying for a master's in integrated communications. She also did a short stint in England as a British chevening scholar. So I would invite all the panelists, and we hope to have a very fruitful discussion.
We have a good mix here, 2 ex-bankers, one engineer, The ex-banker has, one current banker, ex-banker who's turned politician, and an engineer talking about the economy. Great. Okay. And
I've forgotten my banking days.
and it's interesting. Some of you, if you open up the yellow sheet in front of you, you'll see Syed, Zafar, Islam, Air India. That's what I saw too when I was actually told about this. So I saw that, but when I met him this morning, and I got to know he's ex-Deutsche, great, okay. Then he told me about how he entered politics, how he told his bank in 2012 that he wanted to move into politics. Fascinating. And then I met some of you in the audience, and there's a retired couple who makes it to pretty much every conference like this in Princeton and Rutgers. There's an entrepreneur there who's burnt a little money in a company which he tried to invest in India. There are some students. There's one student here who's going to get extra credit if he writes a report on this. Because, so it's fun. The one thought on everybody's mind, undoubtedly, is the election. I mean, it's not on the topic. We are supposedly discussing the economy, but the 2019 elections is very much front and center for everybody. We could maybe start from the extreme right. Mr. Ashwini Kumar Tewari can start it off for us, and then we can move this way. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nikhila, for the very interesting introduction. You have not corrected the ex-banker part, and I hope to be...
I did.
You did, okay, thank you. I hope to remain a banker for some more time. Nevertheless, this topic is really, really interesting, democracy and economy. I mean, when I was discussing with Nikhila 2 days back as to how do we shape it up, and she said, I have a bigger problem. The group I've been given, one guy from Air India, at that time we didn't know about the BJP connections and the political connection, and one person from technology, and you're a bank. So economy, you fit in, possibly, but how do you link it to democracy? So this was something, and then we decided, okay, let everybody talk about what they're good in. So therefore, whatever areas you are good in or you know about, you should talk about that, and then think, how do you link it to democracy? So for me, I work for State Bank of India. It is a state-owned bank with the government holding of almost 58% share. It's a pioneer bank in many ways, 200-year-old institution, and it has been the central bank of India before 1935, and then it became the first bank to be nationalized in 1955, and onward. So anything which the government wanted to do in social area, in economic area, in forex area, going out of India, State Bank was always asked to do it, and this was the pioneer bank always. So in that sense, this bank has been integrally involved in the economic side and the social side, and to that extent, it has supported democracy. To me, democracy is very important, but it is led by a combination of many factors. We normally associate democracy with political freedom or the will of people to choose the right candidates who will serve them. But ultimately, the political side is important, but not enough. So therefore, we also require the economic freedom or the economic growth, and also the educational growth, and many other things for democracy to work. We have seen in many countries with democracy, including India, that people sometimes, and especially those with maybe lesser economic and lesser educational backgrounds, could be swayed by extraneous consideration. We've heard stories about elections being swayed by distribution of gifts, distribution of money, all kinds of stories. Now, why does this happen? And yet there are people who are well off educationally, maybe very well qualified, but not doing well economically as the cycles have turned, including in countries like the US, and they're very angry. They have this, I mean, sometimes they think that democracy is not working for them. So therefore, we come to some kind of a conclusion that democracy will work well if, apart from the political choice, people have the economic growth, they do think they're well off and democracy is working for them. And of course, education and all these are supportive areas. So therefore, to that extent, economic well-being is an important part of democracy. Now, having led this brief introduction, I would argue that in India, which has a lot of people, but a lot of them are not doing well economically, they are poor. The definition may vary. I mean, we have the definition of 2,000 calories per day, but that's not enough. I mean, even if you get 2,000 calories, are we good economically? I don't think so. So therefore, it is very important for people to have that economic freedom, and that, in a broader sense, is what is financial inclusion. So therefore, financial inclusion is not necessarily only connecting a person to a bank account, how it has been interpreted in some areas. And yet, having a bank account is important. So therefore, how this financial inclusion spread in India, I'll just briefly lay it out. Public sector banks, which were all the banks, including state bank, which were nationalized from 69, 81, all these years. This group was tasked with financial inclusion. How did it do it? They opened branches. They opened branches in outlier areas, rural areas, semi-urban areas, all, and tried to serve the people by opening accounts, by giving loans to agriculture, loans to small business. Please remember, before 1969, these segments of the Indian economy, that is small business, agriculture, they were not served. The segment which was largely served by banks, which are all private banks, maybe owned by states, the Maharajas, and various other entities, interest groups, were all serving the trading class and also the bigger industry. Bigger industry, of course, was not very well developed at that point of time, but yet that was the class it was largely served. No small business, no agriculture, no individual loans, or personal loans as we understand today, the retail loans, just non-existent. And this was non-existent, I would argue, till about 94, 95. Till in a big way, the private banks started giving it out and everybody joined in the party. So therefore, financial inclusion started from opening of branches. A lot of branches got opened. I mean, the density improved, but India has a lot of people. So branches clearly were not enough. And this continued for a long time. And if you look at the census of 2011, the number of households having accounts was at that point also, after 55 years of India becoming independent, was still about 60%, slightly short of 60%. So 42% of the household, which was 102 million households. Each household, if you put even 4 people, it's a large number of people, 500 million people plus, who didn't have access to bank, no bank account. Now, if you don't have an access to bank account, the bare minimum thing is the money, where do you keep your cash? Keep it at home, under the pillow, under something. Men typically drink it off in rural areas. So therefore, there's no saving. If there's no saving, then there is no investment. There is no investment, you don't get loan, you don't grow. And a first sign of emergency, which could be a health issue, could be a marriage, it'll just push you back into money lenders' arms. You don't have access to money, and therefore, you'll never get out of that cycle. So therefore, something had to be done to give access to bank accounts, and it was not happening incrementally, organically, as everybody expected. So therefore, in 2014, when the current government came in, and this was something which was going on, it's not that suddenly started, this scheme was on, but it gave a big push, something called the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, which was launched in 2014. And every bank, the public sector banks, largely were given a target of connecting each household. The target was 75 million households to one bank account. So it was thought that if you give one account, at least in a family, it will lead to a lot of good things. And the target time was August to January. So it started in August, was to have ended on 26th of January, 75 million accounts in 5 months, flat. And the banks exceeded that number. So therefore, in India, when you do it in a targeted manner, it's a campaign, as a mission, it gets done. And it gets done and more. So therefore, the good thing about this particular scheme is that it wasn't only just account. It was a complete bouquet of services. So this bouquet included a small pension scheme, this bouquet included a small health insurance, a small life insurance, a small investment scheme, and most of these were run by the banks. So not directly run by the government. Government was providing some kind of a subsidy or a support, etc., from the back end. So this was another good thing. If you involve the government in the delivery of the last mile, typically this becomes very difficult. And for the banks themselves, they found it also very difficult, including the public sector banks. How do you reach out to people in the rural areas, in the outlier areas? You can't start opening branches left, right, and center. It's very costly, not economical, and it doesn't get done in 5 months. So what they did was, this was again something which the Reserve Bank and the banks had been trying for some time, but it got a great push in this time. And I've worked in that rural semi-urban areas with those tools. So I know that this wasn't getting pushed. So there's something called business correspondent, business facilitators. So business correspondents were basically large companies like ITC, Hindustan Lever, which were already supplying goods, consumer goods, to a large number of people in the rural areas. They had their network. So the banks tied up with these companies, and their agents went out into the field with handheld computers, which were linked to the banks. By this time, core banking had come, by the way. So they could link, and the spectrum and the mobile revolution was already on at this point. So therefore, these handhelds were connecting to the bank servers. These guys would go to the field, open an account, on the doorstep, make small value payments, take cash, and in that sense, at the end of the day, they would go to the bank branch, wherever it was, maybe 10 miles away or 15 miles away, and get the whole thing done. So this was, and all of these things were happening in parallel. So another problem which was very much there was identity, KYC. The RBI had norms, strict norms about KYC, address proof, and identity proof. And we had voter IDs, we have multiple ID proofs. And many times they was fabricated, there was no surety of a central database. So at this same time, while this was starting out, the Aadhaar came in. The government also gave a big push to Aadhaar, which again was a previous government's initiative, but it got a big push and it got completed in this government's time. So it was important to understand that all of this was required. The KYC norms were loosened, I wouldn't say loosened, but maybe liberalized a little bit. So it wasn't, Aadhaar itself was taken as the only proof of identity and the only proof of residence. So therefore, with doing all of this, the accounts, for zero balance accounts were allowed to be opened. So otherwise there was a minimum balance of maybe 100 rupees also. Nobody could afford that kind of money. So zero balance accounts, Aadhaar as an identity, one-stop identity, which could be done at an off-site. You didn't need to have anything, just your thumb impression, and that would be, the banks could validate that you are so-and-so. And of course, handhelds, business correspondent, a mix of all of this enabled this target of 75 million to be opened. Since then, the government has given a new target, which is to open an account for each adult. And today, after this, as of January 19, almost 338 million accounts were opened. 105 of these were opened by SBI alone. And the good thing is, these are all zero balance accounts when they got opened initially, and today they have $12.5 billion of money in their accounts. Remember, each of these accounts have very, very small value. The government has helped a lot by routing the subsidies, the wage payments, and all this stuff through these accounts, but this is also their own money. It's not that just the government handouts or something is there. Their own money, they're depositing, they're taking out. The insurance schemes have taken off. Almost 10 million people have enrolled in one insurance, the health insurance. Another 50 million have enrolled in another scheme, which is the life insurance. So we have, and again, 10 million or 50 million may seem big here, but in terms of India, still 10% of the total 500 odd million, which is the target group. So therefore, long way to go. But it's this stack of services, all this together, which is making a big difference. It's slow, incremental, not seen outside, doesn't seem revolutionary, but this is what it will take to bring these people up, to give them all these services. SBI runs financial literacy classes, because unless people know that there is an investment to be done, and insurance is important, the crop insurance has to be taken, maybe they would not find the value. And now the recent health insurance, all of this is rolled out. So to me, financial inclusion on the back of bank account at the center, the digital identity, Aadhaar, and all these services, all these insurance, investment, all of this taken together is the real way in which economic freedom would ultimately is coming, and will lead to a better democracy. Thank you.
I know that Mr. Tewari also has some thoughts on entry-level skills apart from financial inclusion. So we'll circle back and we'll try and give everybody time. So I'd like Harsh to kind of take over at that point and go ahead.
Yeah, I thought we were doing a round robin, so just want to add to everyone, the perspective that I offer here is one that has worked with the federal government for my entire adult life, and specifically have had multiple contracts in India. So whereas my panel is highly educated and has multiple from India to US, it's also very helpful to get the US's perspective back, because you have the oldest democracy in the world and you have the oldest democracy in the world, where they're working together is what will make the world safer and better across all spectrums. And what I think is very interesting, going back to what you had said about the BJP elections, or actually the India elections that are coming up, is that what happens over in India is going to really determine geopolitics to a very high degree. Right now, what has happened between Prime Minister Modi and the President Trump administration is a strengthening of the US-India relations that has not been historically precedent. And so if for some reason Modi were to not be prime minister, that will have an impact, because historically the US has had better relations with other South Asian nations, and that's unfortunate, especially because the U.S. minority in this country is very proud, not only of India, but also of the U.S., and represents the most educated, the wealthiest minority, as well as those that are the most entrepreneurial. So expanding and developing deeper ties between the two countries is essential, and that only happens due to activities like this. So I thank Rutgers University, I thank the Consul General of India from New York in making this panel occur. I would also like to add that, I'm an engineer, and so what I focused on more is aviation, work with the US Army, and satellite navigation. And so the work that we've done in India was helping create their standards for explosive detection systems. We've helped with their manufacturing processes as we've been transplanting things from the US to India, because right now India has a closest ally status that traditionally has only been there for like the UK and the US. And so there's a lot of potential of transferring of technology from the US to India to compensate for, I would say, disparity, but it needs to be further embraced by India. I think that there's been a bit of a focus on holding the US defense, the India defense deals with Russia, and those might have to be looked at again if you want further investment from the US into India and further embraced. So we'll go into more aspects of that and discussions, but just a brief overview. I think that the elections that are coming up are crucial, they're critical, and as we've seen here in this country, democracy is loud, but it's essential, and in the end, it errs in the side of progress.
Mr. Zafar, go ahead, and he's traveling back. He just came in, and he's leaving this evening because he's part of the central team in India in the BJP for the 2019 election. So he's at the heart of what they are planning and what they see as the economic imperative. For each of us, I think economy means different things, depends on our circumstances, but I'd like to hear from him. Go ahead.
Everyone knows, as Harshvardhan rightly mentioned, that the two important democracies in the world, the oldest democracy and the largest democracy, is where we are sitting is the oldest democracy. And I come from the largest democracy. And the two important aspects of any democratic process is that this role of a state is to provide the social and economic justice to every stakeholders. And in that context, really, since I come from a political party and since we are in the government, I will just briefly talk about what we have done in last 4.5 years or close to 5 years since we are in the power. Because historically, our party, Bharatiya Janata Party, was known, or people used to perceive Bharatiya Janata Party as the party of urban India or a party of city dwellers. But that perception has been changed in last 4.5 years purely because the Honorable Prime Minister, since the day he assumed the power, the first speech he said that we want to work for every stakeholder of the country, irrespective of whether they have voted for us, not voted for us, it doesn't matter, but we will have a very inclusive approach in providing the economic and social justice to every citizen of this country. That was his first statement after having won the election before even taking oath of the Prime Minister. And he followed what he said, and with a very important slogans which we had. It was not electoral slogan for us. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is a slogan which actually says that for everyone, the development for everyone, and something which we have implemented in the last 4.5 years. And I will briefly touch upon a few things which Mr. Tewari has already touched, but I will also touch upon a few important landmark initiatives which had been undertaken by the Honorable Prime Minister purely to touch the life of every citizen of this country. So, since, as I said, it was not an electoral slogan for us, it was a well-thought strategy of the Prime Minister, well-thought strategy of our party that after having assumed the power, we have to work for every citizen. Last mile in the queue his interest has to be safeguarded by the state. And that cannot happen because historically we all know that there was a policy paralysis. In India in 2013, the economy was in bad shape, no decision was taken. The people of India was really traumatized with the kind of development taking place, in particular in terms of corruption. And that was really rampant in India. the people of India were really fed up with this kind of news every day coming up that the scam after scam was getting unearthed in 2013-14. And in that backdrop, the opportunity came for the Prime Minister, for our party, and we had decided to work for the nation. And we initiated with that whatever initiative we'll take will ensure that it reaches to the people. And that can happen if we have a good governance model. And that is something which, when we say good governance, that defines the good governance is defined by the fairness of the approach the state has, and the efficiency of the conduct the state administration has. And these two primary objectives the government was adopting in their approach. And eventually what we have seen that the first task the Prime Minister had to fix the economy, and the economy was in bad shape. Every macroeconomic parameter was looking terrible. If in last 4.5 years, economy is, everyone knows that it is the best destination for investment. The economy is doing exceedingly well. All the macroeconomic parameters looking very, very good. And the inflation is very low. The other parameters, economic parameters, is looking very, very, very good. And the global community has realized that India is the best destination for investment, primarily because that was the focus. But in terms of softer issues, like as I said, the last mile and sabka saath, sabka vikas, how the development will take for everyone. I will give you two examples because there is a paucity of time and 5 minutes. I can't speak for everything, but I come from a minority community in India. And the perception by the people of globally, and even in this part of the world, that the state does not take adequately and safeguard adequately the cause of minorities. But let me tell you, all the 52 schemes which had been introduced by the government, by the BJP government or NDA government since 2014, and if you see the benefits, for instance, Ujjwala scheme, the free gas connection to women, and the population of Muslim or the minority in India is like 14-15%. But the beneficiary of that is out of this scheme, if you just see, is more than 25% are Muslim beneficiary. How it happened? It's not by design. Clearly, the process was such where we has less interference from the government. It's more of the process which had to be followed by everyone. As I said, that in a manner where no priority should be given to any particular person, but those who deserve and who should be the beneficiary as the one who have been given that facility. So that is one scheme. There is another scheme, Mudra scheme, for instance. There are Mudra scheme, even in Mudra scheme, which has been a loan given by the bank, that again, the beneficiary, large beneficiary comes from the minority and the Dalit community. Likewise, there are many other schemes. If you just analyze the government scheme, you will realize that the beneficiaries are the common man, the poorer section of society, the marginalized section of the society, and that the government has been able to deliver, despite the fact there's a lot of corruption it used to happen in the past. But today, using the technology in a very best efficient manner, we have been able to reach out to every citizen of this country, and the beneficiaries have been given whatever benefit was to be given to them has reached to their account using the Jan Dhan account, and which Mr. Tewari has talked about, that we opened their account and all the benefits have been passed through direct benefits. And the process, whatever leakages used to happen in the past because of corruption, has also been stopped. So I'll stop here because I'll go endlessly and I can speak about the government's achievement.
We're talking about the Indian economy, but a large part of these people are people who live here, work here, or study here. There is a small section of the student community which is, has just come in, maybe freshmen from India, but pretty much predominantly living and working here. So I think we'll get some questions from them. One data point I just wanted to throw out there, so it's there. Anyone can pick it up. But 1.3 million people, I'll just repeat that, 1.3 million Indians come into working age every month in India. Now, Like he said, the Ujjwala scheme. There are many things that the government can do. I mean, somebody could well ask, can somebody take a 1.3 billion population and do this any better? A valid question. You know, it's hard. But what about jobs for entry-level people? That's an issue. It will become more of an issue because it's election year. We saw that. We are seeing that in the US, we are seeing that in other places. So with that, I'll toss it over. If any of you have questions, some of you did mention that you may want to ask, go ahead, and then we can toss it back to the panelists.
So thank you for your introduction. My name is Anirudh. I'm a researcher at the Gov Lab at New York University. My question is to Mr. Ashwini. You mentioned a very important thing in the start, which is that democracy, apart from politics, has to be a result of many other things, and how the economy ties into that. So my question is, the stat that you mentioned of the target of 17 million bank accounts, to me, from a democratic point of view, is an input rate. You're giving people bank accounts. Does that solve the problem you mentioned about people not saving and people not investing in bringing money away? How do we measure the output rate? How does the 17 million bank accounts improve people's lives?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll answer in two ways. One is historically and statistically, by a lot of studies, it has been proved that if a person has a bank account, they have an access to a formal financial system, so they can save, and then based on that, they can get loans. But that is based on other studies. But very interestingly, State Bank itself, because we have an economic team, economic research department, which does multiple studies. The recent study, which was done last year, on these accounts, PMJDY accounts, in about 5 or 6 states, which are large states like UP, Bihar, and which are more backward in that sense. This study showed that on all these accounts, when people had account for almost a year or more, a couple of broad trends were seen. One was the level of intoxication in those villages came down. Again, I mean, you cannot judge perhaps in a wholesale manner, but then samples have to be taken. Necessarily in India, samples are large from a large number of states. But nevertheless, this was one outcome which was seen. The other outcome which was seen, and which is known to us as well, is that the zero balance accounts, which was zero balance to begin with, the balances started coming in. Some part of it was due to government subsidies and the payments which came in, but it was not the only thing. So for us, we saw from almost like an average balance of 200 rupees, this is again including all these subsidy payments, the balance as of January 19, in about 3 years' time in those accounts had gone up to 1,833, which is a jump of 9 times. And now all of this is not government subsidy. That's what I'm trying to again make clear. This is their own saving. Their own saving could be 10 rupees, 20 rupees, less than $1. I mean, like 20 cents, 30 cents if you talk about in that sense. And this average 1833 is a huge number. So that means saving habit is increasing. Third is that the study also found 34% of the transactions which were being done in these accounts were remittance transactions. So you have to understand a large number of people in rural India, there are not enough opportunity. Agriculture is a lot of underemployment, disguised employment doesn't pay for everyone. So necessarily a lot of people go out to the cities and work there as migrants, and they have to send money back. Now, if there is no account, it was very difficult to send money back. There were so-called internal hawalas where people would give cash to somebody who will carry it. I mean, very tricky and sometimes losing and not instantaneous, definitely. Now with all this happening, these accounts being there, the money could be sent. And there are things like, I mean, this is not even the US. I believe it is not there. Maybe you can correct me. A guy who did not have an account, in let's say the migrant will not have an account, he can just go to a bank or maybe to many of these smaller agencies which have now formed, deposit the cash there. The other side has just an ATM card, or not even an ATM card. They can go to an ATM. They have that text on the mobile, because mobiles are, I mean, they spread more than the bank accounts. 700 million mobiles in India out of 1.3 billion. The bank account population is probably still around 600 million odd. So they get a text on the mobile. They go and type that code into the ATM and they'll get cash. So we have various models. So this remittances again showed 34% increase, showed a large number of usage of these accounts. Finally, a lot of these accounts also started taking more loans from the banks. Now, one side of it is the banks are asked to give loans on targeted beneficiaries below poverty line in various areas, but that's clearly not enough. The overall targets are too low, even if percentage-wise maybe 10%, how much that will cover. So therefore, some of these people use this base as the base because you have to have margin also. It cannot be zero margin, 100% loan. They use it as to pick up more loans. Maybe they are consumption loans. But we have to understand in rural India, marriage, sometimes death, sometimes ceremonies, religious ceremonies like thread ceremony, and in health especially, these are big, big expenses. Each of these could push a family into poverty by going to a moneylender and borrowing money at what rates? Moneylenders charge minimum of 5% a month, which is 60% a year, sometimes 120% a year. So if you have that kind of loan for, let's say, even 1 year, that's it. For life, you are into the trap. And banks, the maximum rate is how much? 14% a year. So you see, it's like there's no comparison as such. So from all many ways, these accounts have been shown to have made life better. Of course, it is incremental. We should never expect revolutions, and it will take time, but it's happening.
My name is Gubat Ibadoglu. I'm based in the Department of the Economics. My question is the account penetration. Actually, the World Bank report, Global Finex database shows that India has the impressive result to compare the 2017 and 2011 and the 14, especially among the female, and they have a very high level, 76% access to the account. But in another side, the Heritage Foundation ranking shows that India, in the economic freedom, was ranked 143 out of the 186. It's not good ranking for the India. I think one of the main also challenges for the democracy and the economy. And another, I want to raise question about the poverty, because India is still in the lower income countries, middle income countries, and one of the main problem in the poverty. How's the poverty and the economic freedoms has an adverse effect of the democracy in general? Is my question.
I mean, I'll take a crack at that first. I think that, as the moderator was mentioning earlier, Nikhila, you have new workforce entering every single year, and they need to get good paying jobs. And your question specifically is, how do you improve the financial freedom, the economic freedom, as well as how do you make it so that there's less poverty? And plain and simple, I think a very good model would be the second largest employer in India, which is IBM. And IBM, I think, has close to 130,000 jobs in India right now, second only to Reliance. And what they're doing is that, India is producing many engineers and technologists and technicians. And so they've created a symbiotic relationship where I think globally IBM is at around 380,000, and the majority is in India. But see, you still have over 100,000 here. And that symbiotic relationship where you can do a lot of the testing where you might need more high number of thinkers as opposed to just qualitatively having a few number of researchers in the US, I think that model can work. That model can work from a technology standpoint. That model can work from a manufacturing standpoint. If we take pharmaceuticals, for example, right now we purchase them from Canada, from Ireland, from Sweden. But if you think about the fact that the cost to create a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility in India would be far lower, as long as you can get the right quality standards, you're going to be producing massive amounts of jobs. But no matter how much we produce, the population is growing in India to such a degree that that demand will be there. And so I think that we need to look at how we can symbiotically connect the two economies so that, from those that are here on the free market side from a business standpoint, they're able to get better margins on their profit. It makes sense for them to produce in India. On the flip side, India is able to make more jobs, and they're able to bring that money home where they can utilize the banking system, which otherwise if they're using more agricultural type jobs, they might not be, aligned with it, whereas a US job would maybe require it. And on the other side, the consumer here in the US is able to pay less. For example, if you're paying less for medicine or you're paying less for, the cost that Lockheed Martin is trying to reduce on its aviation development with manufacture in India. So I think that it's really about bringing the two countries together to solve all these problems, because I think the reason why India is 143 out of 180 some, as per the Heritage Foundation, in economic freedom is more because you have so many people that it takes time to really bridge the gap. But it's very solvable, especially if the US and India are able to.
Half of India is under 25. That's a reality. What about getting them into the workforce? Industry keeps saying their skills are not good enough. The workforce keeps saying you're not training us the way industry wants. There is a gap. What are politicians thinking about this? Are they thinking about it? Is it important? Does it
Well, it's very important because if you see, as you rightly pointed out, we have a young population. India is a young country, and if you see the work, the retired people and the young population, the percentage is only skewing in towards the younger generation. So we have to, with this, a bigger responsibility of any government, and that we have to create as many jobs, and we have to create environment that the environment creates a number of jobs to accommodate all these aspirants who are passing out from the school and colleges. But let me tell you a few important issues that, as Harshvardhan was also talking about, that India has lot of opportunity, but in terms of a skill set, we have identified, as a government, we have identified the skill set, our skilled employees, our skilled people are very, very less compared to the Western world. For instance, if you see in Germany, the 96% people are skilled people. Compared to India, in 2014, it was only 1% where people were skilled people. So the government's big focus is skill development, and there's a separate ministry which is actually primarily focusing on providing skill to the younger generation. And it is definitely, it has the needle has moved from there, and the percentage has definitely improved. From 1%, now it is more than 5% people are skilled people. But of course, it's a big task, and it's a gigantic task for the government, and we are moving towards that. But everyone in India thinks that government can create or offer that many jobs. The government job is not cannot offer that many jobs to the aspirant. But what government can do, or what the government is intending to do, is to create an environment where a lot of investment does take place in India, and opportunities can be created to accommodate the aspiring young generation. And that is something which is evident from the fact that all the structural reform which had been undertaken by the government in last 4.5 years, despite a lot of resistance from the opposition parties, but yet government went ahead, because if you are able to take those structural reforms, then the economy will be able to grow faster. And as the GDP growth is there, and the economy is in order, then a lot more investment will take place. And I'll give you one example. Since 2001, between 2001 and 2014, the total FDI in India was $500 billion. And last 3 years, the total FDI, purely because of the structural reform which had been undertaken, and the confidence which the global community now has with the Indian government and the policies which has been initiated by the government of India, $500 billion commitment has been committed by the global investors. A lot of companies are setting up their shops in India, the manufacturing hub in India, and from there they are producing and exporting to the different part of the world. That process has begun. All the policies takes time to bed in. It is happening, and I'm sure that going forward, the investment will come. The manufacturing hub, which the global community wants to set up in India, the environment is good, and it's happening. And I'm sure that a lot of people will be absorbed in manufacturing space. But away from that manufacturing space, in the service sector also, we are doing a lot of things to ensure that enough number of job opportunities the government can create and provide the skilled labor to the companies so that they can be absorbed.